Today we're diving into the world of pianist to composer Randy Ingram, a true modern jazz visionary. Hailed as a formidable composer by the San Francisco Chronicle, Randy's worked with some of the greatest musicians in jazz, from John Patitucci and Jeff Tain Watts to Ari Hoenig and Billy Higgins. His latest album, Aries Dance, featuring Billy Hart and Gress, showcases his deep harmonic sensibility and expressive touch. With an incredible career spanning recordings, international tours, and film appearances, Randy continues to shape the jazz landscape. So, Randy, good to see you.
Great to see you too, Abe. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Randy, we met at the Village Vanguard. I think you were going to see a concert just as I was going to see a concert. And that's always like something I love to see when someone, a musician, as talented as yourself with the career you have, going to check out music in
Well,
that way.
it's all about community, right? And that's the great thing about the city that we live in is just the community of amazing musicians and getting inspiration from your peers and your mentors and yeah, I love going to the Vanguard whenever I can.
I mean, it's probably one of the best rooms to go hear music in.
I think so, and I think in a certain sense that it sort of represents the sort of state of the art as far as what's going on.
Have you ever played there before?
That's the one club I have yet to play, but it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen at some point. So
Is it in the works, or is it, this is something you just have like a thing, you could just tell it's coming.
nothing is specifically in the works yet, but it's on the sort of long-term goal of, that's maybe the long-term goal of mine. So we'll get there one of these days.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I speak to so many jazz musicians, and everybody from, musicians in their 20s to musicians in their, late 60s, some of them still have yet to grace the stage
Right.
of this venue, but it always seems to be a goal. But nonetheless, you said you've played all the other clubs, so that's we can't that's still something truly special too.
Sure, sure. And it's, I mean, any of these, there's so many great venues in New York and obviously such a great community of musicians that you can't take any appearance here for granted.
Well, I remember the night we met. I'm like a private detective, so
Hmm.
when we met that night, my friend had told me, you know how great you were, and then I was on the car ride home going back to Jersey. I do my due diligence. I listen
Hmm.
to some of the music on my phone, and I listened to one of your live concerts at Mesro with your trio.
Mm.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was the trio on the last record. It made me, am I right, or was it maybe just a different bass player?
I've had a couple experiences to play with Billy Hart live at Mesro, so it could have been from one of those. Yeah.
Was Drew on one of those?
Drew has been sort
Okay.
of my main bass player for, geez, 7, 8 years now. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that was and that's the what I heard was the live concert, from the
Yeah.
yeah. And I think you played Dolphin Dance, something like that. I'm
Right, right. Yeah, there's a couple videos because everything's streamed and recorded at Mesro, so there's a couple things that I've put up as little promo clips,
Do you
so to
do you
speak.
mind that stuff gets streamed? Or are you okay with it, or
I think
is it?
it's great. I mean, I think that I certainly respect and understand the people who are not okay with it, but I think that eh, unfortunately, we're in an age now where, you know, it's tough to get out there. It's tough to sort of separate yourself or just sort of distinguish yourself from just the glut of content that's out in the world. So I think any sort of thing like that, if you view it as a promotional tool, if you view it as a sort of hey, this is what I do, this is who I am here in the world, I think it's a great tool.
Oh yeah, I mean I love it. I mean I'll go on YouTube. I'll put on like a concert like that the
Yeah.
musicians and just watch it like on my big TV with the sound like it's like I'm there,
Right.
as opposed to
Right.
listening to a record. I just prefer that. Just
Sure.
to
Sure. I don't, I see them as complementary though. I don't see that the live recording will necessarily take away from people dealing with your record.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Billy and Drew, are they like what you would consider to be the regular members of your trio?
Well, I would say that Drew is sort of as much as one can have a sort of working trio with so many great musicians that are busy and great bass players and drummers are obviously in high demand. So as much as I can have a working bass player, it would be Drew, and the drummer that I've actually had the longest relationship with is a wonderful drummer named Jochen Ruckert, who's on three
Oh
other of
yeah,
my
yeah.
records.
I
Yeah, and I consider Jochen sort of the working drummer in my trio. Getting to make music with somebody like Billy Hart is such a treat and such an honor. So whenever I'm able to make that happen, it's amazing. He's 84 now. He's not slowing down at all. It's absolutely incredible. But
Does it
you know,
feel, I mean, I've seen Billy play, so many times.
yeah,
And never played with him, but it's so amazing that to sit up close to see him, and then you see him on all these old, videos with the
sure,
masters. Do,
sure.
do you think about that like before
I
you
I
play
think
sometimes?
about it. I think about it all the time. I mean, it's just that's the truth right there, and there's so many aspects of what he's done come through at different moments in his playing. He can be such a creative and challenging drummer that pushes the music in different ways and then at the same time he has such an incredible deep beat, and such an incredible deep groove and the years of playing with Wes Montgomery or years of playing with Jimmy Smith, that's all in there too. Sorry, Abe, I'm so sorry. I think I lost your sound for a second. Still can't. I wonder if it's a problem on hmm. Yeah, I'm not hearing you at all for some reason. That's weird.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can. Now I can.
Okay. Perhaps it's the microphone. I need to.
Ah,
But is it still clear?
yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry about that. We were
No,
talking
no worries.
the first time you had called him for or heard him, that sort of thing. Like what? Remember the first gig you did with Billy?
Well, so the backstory with Billy is I've obviously been a fan and I've listened to him for years. And it was you know realize like wow, he's on so many different records that I love. And I knew his son Lorca, who's a wonderful drummer in his own right, out in Los Angeles, and so I did a lot of gigs with Lorca when I was still an undergrad student out there. And through Lorca, a couple times, Lorca would come to visit New York and go out with his dad and see some music, and I ran into them a couple places. One night, years and years ago, I was playing at the Cornelia Street Cafe, and Billy happened to be in the audience. I mean, this is when you think about that idea of community, somebody like him just saying like, "Hey, I'm gonna go spend some time just listening
That's
to some
happened to me
music."
like so many times. It's like
Yeah, it's so wonderful.
wonderful.
And we talked afterwards, and he was very complimentary, and I sort of kept tried to keep in touch with him. Obviously, he meets so many musicians. I don't know if he always would remember that, but I called him to play that show at Mesro. I knew that Drew would sort of vouch for me because Drew and Billy work a lot together, and Billy was up for it, and it's like it's sort of instantly from the first note that he played is just a big smile on his face and okay, everything's cool.
Almost like certain musicians you play with, and I'm sure they feel that way about playing with you as well. Like it's just everything is moving. I'm not like slow, but in a good way. You're just total. It's like you're watching yourself in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be aligned to a certain sense of we're here, we're present right now, and whatever we're creating is whatever it is. And it might not be the way it is with another musician you like playing with, but you have to be open to whatever that combination of players and whatever's in the atmosphere at that moment, you know.
Well, did you think obviously, you went to study school and you went out to the, study formally in
Right.
college and everything. Did you think that the career was going to be what it is, or did you imagine it would be something totally different when you were younger?
I think I think the biggest thing that I couldn't account for was how just the world would change, how sort of the industry would change in certain ways, you know, and I think when I was young I had these sort of, I had these dreams and sort of goals, but um thinking like, oh, I'm gonna get in a big touring band and just right on the road from as soon as I get to New York. And it's, for some people that can happen that way, but um there's a whole other way of going about it, right? And there's a lot more community, and I think that there are a lot more great musicians that maybe you haven't heard of if you're not in that community of music. But to me, instead of it being competition, it's community,
Yeah, I
music
think.
for everyone.
I mean, I was like the most competitive human being in the jazz world for like 20 years. I only shifted like maybe 6 months ago. So.
Sure, sure. And it, and there's I think sometimes there's a little bit of a scarcity mentality and all of that, but I think that you realize there'll be a place for you, if you connect with everybody and try and play as great as you can and try and, do all the other things, show up on time to things, not be a drag to be around.
So you're saying show up to things on time, like so you're open to working with different groups as a sideman.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. I think that as one gets a little more established, as one has a little more of a body of work, I think there are gigs I'm not interested in doing. I've done plenty of accompanying cabaret singers and
Oh
stuff
yeah,
like
yeah.
that over the years, and musically, those were really valuable experiences. Even if sometimes at the time I was not excited about all of them. Like there's certainly those things are very good for you musically.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, we like you said, that was such an important thing for you musically. There's certain situations we go through as younger musicians, like cutting our teeth. Was that the one for you that just pushed you in a sense, like whether it's learning about the business or you kind of something that you happens when you're younger, I guess I'm asking that you see things very differently after that.
I think that one of the things that again, this idea of sort of not sort of seeing the big picture, right? And I think when you're younger, maybe, especially when you're in school and everything is sort of geared towards a very artistic side of performance, sometimes it's hard to see how other things fit in to your musicianship, right? So,
Like just everyone who goes to music school afterwards, like just has to take like a hallucinogenic or something like
well, not necessarily. I mean, to me, especially graduate school at New York Conservatory was amazing. I working with Fred Hirsch, I was working with Danilo Perez, was studying, theory and composition directly with George Russell and with Bob Brookmeyer. I mean, these are the best people that one can work with.
Yeah. Well, you sound like you had a good experience at school. Other people can,
Yeah, I had a great experience. But I think a little bit sometimes we miss the forest for the trees a little bit, when we're young and sort of when we're in that school environment. And I think if you have the right attitude, like sure, I might not be excited now to play in a cabaret environment where my harmonic colors and sort of my opinion of sounds is not what the gig calls for, but doing those I learned a lot. There's always things to learn about playing the instrument better, accompanying people better.
so
Those are valuable lessons to learn.
those were the most, important ones for you in the beginning, you would say.
I think those were experiences that I had a fair amount of early on. And then also the important thing was just sort of playing with other musicians. I mean, that's again, I think about this community here. My very first week in New York,
What year was that?
it was 2003. It was the summer of 2003, so it was a long time ago. And I remember getting to town and a drummer that I had known from my undergrad days in LA connected with him and he said, "Oh, let's play a session." I was subletting an apartment in Astoria, Queens, and I get to the session and it's Ingrid Jensen on trumpet and it's a great bass player, Joseph Lepore, who plays, is a big part of the scene here. And musicians like that are interested in playing, interested in meeting other musicians, interested in connecting, and
And
that scene has always been, I think, that's what makes New York special. That scene of playing sessions and connecting with musicians and everybody really being about the music.
there are those certain people who are always down to have a session and play if their time is there. But I feel like there's the other side. If they're not making money, there's going to be no session, that sort of thing.
Right, right. But I think the great musicians are still first and foremost about the music. I mean, I'll tell you a funny story. I was When this record came out, we did a release tour in Europe with Jochen and Drew, and we were on a plane somewhere, and I think it was time to turn the cell phones off or something like that. And Drew's looking at his phone, about to turn it off, and he's like, "Oh, Jack DeJohnette's calling me." Um, so he connected with Jack after the flight, and Jack wanted Drew to come up to Woodstock and do some playing with him. Maybe
Right.
Jack was thinking about working out some music or just wanted to connect and play with some musicians. So that's happening at the highest level.
That's so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I've heard about that with some established players, but I've never heard of Jack DeJohnette just calling to play a session for fun. That's awesome.
Right, right. And I'm sure Jack wouldn't do it with just everybody, but he and Drew have a relationship and Drew's played on multiple records with him. But
Um, what's on the agenda for you in the upcoming months or at the end of the year? Like, what are you looking forward to the most as far as playing, that sort of thing?
well, some interesting stuff coming up. I'm going to Portugal in a couple weeks. I have a couple gigs over in Lisbon. I have some great friends over there, great drummer João and Castro, who's based in Lisbon. We're going to do a couple trio things, and I'm also doing a solo piano concert over there, which is exciting and terrifying at the same time. That's always been a tricky thing. I think it's a
Solo?
tricky thing for anyone. Yeah, solo piano. So this will be the first. I guess I did a live stream concert during COVID, but this will be the first real sort of solo piano
Well,
concert that I've played.
I'm in the middle of trying to turn one of at my studio a one of the bigger rooms into like a smaller performance space, which can have
Oh,
like
very cool.
solos. So you know, now I have to ask you to do it when this comes to fruition. Hopefully, it'll work.
Sure. Sure, that'd be great.
I'm doing the first one, but we're doing a test run, so hopefully, fingers crossed that it can, it'll work. So,
Yeah.
fingers crossed. Um, and I know you teach too.
I do teach. I've taught that's sort of been a constant my whole time in New York. Right now, I'm on the faculty of a smaller university in New Jersey called Drew University.
Oh yeah,
It's
I'm at
been
Fairleigh Dickinson. I'm right next to you.
Oh, okay. There you go. There you go. And so at Drew, I teach a jazz history class. I direct the jazz ensemble. And I just joined the faculty of Hofstra University out on Long Island.
Oh, that's great.
That's a great school, and they're really working at sort of rebuilding their jazz program.
I think doesn't Dave PH? No, is it no Ralph Lama's brother?
Dave LaLama, so he retired a couple years ago, and I think I'm sort of the official hire to eventually replace him.
Oh,
Um,
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. So, a lot of these universities had, obviously during COVID, enrollment sort of stalled a little bit. And, I think we're now getting to the point where we can sort of get students back interested in the arts and things like that.
But you teach the jazz ensemble at Drew, you said?
I Drew, I teach the jazz ensemble. Yep, yep. It's not a big band, it's a smaller ensemble, but
Yeah. So those are those like, is there a jazz program or is it like
There's not a jazz program. There's a music program. It's actually very small. So there's only a handful of music majors, and a lot of them might be composition majors or theory majors. But we have students that minor in music. We have students that are liberal arts majors that want to play in the ensembles and all of that. So it's
man, you're
it's
probably
always a fun challenge.
you're
So
turning those kids' heads upside down, I'm sure, with your
yeah, and it's always great to see how much they grow and adapt and
well,
yeah,
do
they're
they get a chance to perform like a concert at the end of the
we
semester?
do a concert at the end of each semester. Yeah. So,
And as far as repertoire, I mean, you understand that, these aren't jazz majors, quote unquote. So I'm sure you're very understanding as far as bringing in repertoire to make the group sound strong.
yeah, well, you have to meet people where they are, right? So, sometimes it's and I've taught so many jazz camps over the years and taught at the high school level and things like that. And so, yeah, sometimes you need to work with things that are simpler harmonically, but you can always find interesting, creative songs, and kind of dig a little deeper into the repertoire.
So
And
what's in
so,
the repertoire for the spring semester? You don't mind?
we're working on, there's a great Freddie Hubbard tune called Straight Life. We're working on that. I have a great vocalist. I have a great vocalist in the ensemble, so we're trying out some different standards and things. We're working on, I thought it would kind of be fun to do the song Sunny, sort of more of a R&B tune, but it's been covered by so many great jazz musicians. What else? What else have we been working on? Couple different blueses, things of that nature. So
Well, that's actually that's a great way to people get people who aren't jazz majors those good repertoire to.
yeah, yeah. And really try and foster an environment where everybody's eager to improvise and try and comfortable with the idea of just kind of going for it.
Yeah, because I think I'm sure how some jazz musicians you sound very you have sound like you have a lot of empathy and awareness and you seem very kind in that respect to even consider that because I'm sure there's other jazz musicians who I'm sure they're just completely different. They would go in there and tear these kids apart.
My everything I've been taught through my mentors and through my own life experiences is this is one of those sort of planet or sort of cliched statements, but it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And I would rather see the way the students evolve and enjoy themselves and explore and learn and grow through the
I agree
semester
with you.
rather than saying, hey, we nailed that concert.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's the healthy approach. I don't, but
Right.
no, it is in jazz. There's this in the earlier days. There was more toughness, and people were a little more harsh, in a sense.
Well, yes and no, I think. I
Yeah,
think
you had
some
dramatic
stories
teachers.
are maybe overemphasized. But
You had great teachers. It sounds like who really.
I really did, and I feel really thankful for them. And they're still I still keep in touch. Obviously, George and Brookmeyer have left us, but I still keep in touch with Fred and Danilo, and Fred's been a great mentor and a great sort of asset and friend in New York, which is awesome. So
Yeah, I think he's playing at Smoke next week, or I could be wrong.
he's doing some solo piano stuff, and unfortunately, I'll be out of town then, but it'll be.
So, what's your favorite club to play in the world? If you had to pick one club to put on
In the
repeat.
world. Wow. I can't pick one, so I'll give you a few.
You ever seen the movie
Obviously.
Groundhog Day with Bill Murray?
What's that?
Groundhog Day with Bill
Of
Murray.
course, of
That's so
course.
you could pick a couple to play in one day.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, Mesro, of course. Mesro is just an amazing place and Spike is, again, talk about community. Like Spike has done so much to really create a community and create a place where people, so many musicians perform there. There's so much great music happening there. And I think Mesro is was very intentionally made as a very sort of adult, quote unquote, listening environment, which is great. And that obviously suits the idea of, sort of things being piano centric. Other clubs that I really love, there's a club I've just had the opportunity to play it once, but Sunset Sunside in Paris is one of the sort of long-standing clubs, and very much in the same vein of a Smalls or a Mezzrow, very sort of about the music, but great audience there. There are some clubs. I'll be just booked a tour for a year and a month from now. So March of 2026, I'm going back to a smaller club in a city north of Munich called Neuburg. There's a club Birdland Neuburg there. Absolutely amazing venue and very, very cool.
I don't think we're going
Um,
to fly to all three countries in one day.
Probably not. Probably not. Maybe. Well, I'm gonna do one more, and then maybe with the time change, maybe it'll sort of work out. And that would be the Pit Inn in Shinjuku in Tokyo.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that place.
That's an amazing club. And very, again, I guess I think that there's something about the sort of more bare bones clubs in a way that I really like. And it's not that the fact that they're bare bones makes them appealing to me, but it's the fact that you can see that the club has chosen to allocate its sort of assets and attention to the music,
Do you remember the time you first heard like piano trio or really improvised music at a club, like the first one you saw actually live?
I think the not a trio, but I think I'm trying to remember. I think obviously I grew up about an hour south of Los Angeles, and I would see some music, but my friend, so I grew up with the drummer Nate Wood, who is, of course, an incredible, incredible musician. And his dad is also a wonderful composer, engineer, musician, songwriter, you name it. So we would always get these passes to the NAMM show in
Ah,
high school. And I think maybe it was like my senior year of high school that I went for the first time, and saw Herbie Hancock play for the first time. So
whoa.
that was, you know, by then I was already, of course, a huge fan of Herbie. So that was amazing. I definitely remember seeing in Los Angeles there was a club called the Catalina Bar and Grill. It's
Oh
still
yeah, yeah.
there in a different location, but the old Catalina Bar and Grill was not a huge room. Um, it was a great venue. I saw McCoy there. I saw Chick there. I remember seeing Benny Green's trio a few times there and just being just enthralled by the entire thing.
This
Just
is so
amazing.
funny because like you're talking about Benny Green. I just commented on his Facebook post like an hour ago, and then you talk about
Yeah,
Herbie, and I was teaching my student Herbie yesterday. It's just like
nice.
I love this stuff, this type of
Yeah,
coincidence.
I mean, but again, community, you know.
Yeah. So no, this sounds like, you're gonna have a really exciting year. So as far as where people can get in touch with you, that sort of thing, what's the best way to do so if you want to just kind of plug your website or social media for the podcast?
Yeah, I mean the website is randyingram.com, which that's probably due to be updated again. And then I guess I got in early enough on all the social media platforms that both Instagram and Facebook are just my name. And working with it's always a struggle to really embrace the social media world. But I know that it is the way that, especially if we are presenting something to the world, it's the way we can connect, with people now. So,
Title at this
I definitely try and keep those pages current as far as what I'm doing and when and where I'm playing and things like that.
Awesome. No,
Um,
thanks so much, Randy.
Thank you, Abe. It's such a pleasure to speak to you, and thanks for thinking of me for
Oh,
this
of
too.
course. Absolutely.